Okay, so we will begin the day's program. We'll start with the paying homage to the Buddha 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll do the verse of homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning, everybody. And today is January 16th, 2021. And we're continuing now our reading of the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fours. And then we have here 4 suttas concerned with the Pali word is baya, which has 2 aspects. So the 2 aspects of baya, one would be, I call this the subjective aspect, which is what we would call fear. And then the objective aspect, which you might call danger or peril. And the attitude towards baya, whether fear or danger, it's somewhat ambivalent in early Buddhism, having 2 aspects. An aspect in which there's a kind of healthy or beneficial fear, and that is the fear in regard to what is truly a danger. And then there is the harmful or maybe constricting fear, and that is fear when fear is not really warranted. In fact, there's a verse in the Dhammapada that underscores that point. Let me see if I could get the Dhammapada open.
Is it possible to make a screen a little bit bigger?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, so this is verse 317, which says, those who see something to fear where there is nothing to fear, and see nothing to fear where there is something to fear, upholding false views, they go to states of woe. And so what's wrong is to see danger when there is no danger, and to see no danger where there is truly danger. And we're going to be exploring this a bit more in some of the suttas that we'll be going through today. We already went through 2 of the suttas on perils. Again, this is baya. So the first one just mentions 4 perils: the peril of birth, of old age, of illness, and of death. And somebody pointed out last week that, well, old age, illness, and death are just facts of life. And so the ideal attitude is not to be afraid of them, but simply to accept them. And of course, that's true. But the Buddhist attitude is not that one should be afraid of old age, illness, and death, but one should see them as being undesirable conditions in which we are held in bondage by our defilements, our craving, our ignorance. And so as long as there is ignorance, craving, and the other defilements, we are bound to go again and again through the cycle, coming back to birth. And once we come back to birth, then there's old age, we fall ill, and undergo death. And though it's possible to go through a peaceful death, but as we wander through the cycle of birth and death, we're not guaranteed that we're going to have a peaceful, pleasant death, lying on our deathbed, surrounded by our loving relatives, comforting and consoling us. But the Buddha mentions that in the sutta on the beginningless samsara, he speaks about how countless times we have been apprehended as thieves, as murderers, as adulterers, as rapists, and we've had our head cut off. And even if we've lived an honest life, there's no guarantee that we won't be born under conditions in which there is a tyrannical regime, an autocratic government which is arresting innocent people and condemning them to violent and terrifying deaths. Okay, so we did that sutta last time, 119, 120, 4 kinds of, call these objective conditions that are sources of danger: fire, floods, kings or government, and bandits. Now we come to the new suttas. So we start with 121. Here the Buddha mentions 4 kinds of perils. So there's the peril or danger of self-reproach, the danger of reproach by others, the danger of punishment, and the danger of a bad destination. And then he'll elaborate on each of these. So first, what is the peril, the danger of self-reproach? Okay, here somebody reflects that if I were to engage in unwholesome bodily and verbal conduct, then I might reprove myself because of my behavior. And so this is a wholesome type of fear where one considers that if I were to transgress the precepts, then I would be disturbed by the pangs of conscience. I'd be constantly reproaching myself because of my transgressions. And that is a rather uncomfortable situation, that one always feels that nagging voice of regret, remorse, tormenting the mind. Why did you do this? I shouldn't have done that. It's a terrible thing that you did. And then you start to feel guilty. I hurt this one's feelings. I damaged this one's properties. I spoke rudely to this person. And at the extreme, I killed these people. Or I committed some kind of sexual misconduct, and now I have to cover it up by telling lies and by deceiving others. And so one wants to avoid the self-reproach because one sees the danger, the discomfort, the disturbance, the agitation, and even the pain of a guilty conscience. And so to avoid that pain of a guilty conscience, one abandons bodily misconduct and instead develops good bodily good conduct. One abandons verbal misconduct and develops good verbal conduct. One abandons misconduct even in thought and develops good conduct of thought, maintaining oneself in purity. So through fear of self-reproach, to avoid self-reproach, one avoids moral transgressions. And we see this also in the way the Buddha describes the proper course of conduct of moral training for the monk. Let me just see if I could get the relevant passage here. Oh, yeah, so when the Buddha is explaining the moral training of the monk, he says that the monk is virtuous, he dwells restrained by the patimokkha, that's the code of monastic rules, possessed of good conduct and resort, seeing the danger. This is baya dasavi, seeing baya, even in what seem to be trivial faults. Okay, so the first type of peril to be avoided is that of the self-reproach that comes from moral transgression, and for that concern to avoid this danger becomes a motivation for adopting good conduct. Of course, it's better to, this is sort of the internal monitor that leads one to adopt good conduct. And we could say that the wish to avoid self-reproach, maybe this is one aspect of that quality called in Buddhism, hiri, sometimes translated as the sense of moral shame. So to avoid the self-reproach, to avoid the pangs of inner conscience, one adheres to the standards of good conduct. Now, the next danger is, or peril, is the peril of reproach by others. And here someone reflects that if I were to engage in bodily, verbal, or mental misconduct, then others might reproach me because of my behavior. And so based upon this fear of being reproached by others, one abandons misconduct of body, speech, and mind and develops good conduct of body, speech, and mind. And this basis or this motivation for abandoning misconduct and developing good conduct is, I would say, it's an aspect of the quality called otappa, which is often coupled with hiri. So we often have the compound hiri and otappa. So here, it's not so much that one wants to avoid self-reproach, but one is afraid of being criticized by others. And maybe you might think, a person who avoids misconduct because of fear of being reproached by others is a hypocrite, not truly a moral person. But the Buddha is very pragmatic in his style of teaching. And so he doesn't always necessarily uphold the highest standards, but sometimes he has to bring the teaching down to the level of the people that he's speaking to. And so people will be afraid of being found out by others and criticized by others. And so they'll observe good conduct out of fear of criticism. Okay, the third type of peril that serves as a motivation for good conduct is the fear of punishment, punishment by the external authorities. In this case, the Buddha is speaking against the background of a monarchical form of government where the kings or the instruments of the state administer the punishment. And so he uses the example of somebody sees the king or the let's say the police working under the authority of the king, arresting a thief who has committed a crime, and then they subject the criminal to various punishments. And these punishments during the Buddha's time were extremely cruel. They have him flogged with whips, beaten with canes, beaten with clubs, have the hands cut off, the feet cut off, both hands and feet cut off, the ears cut off, the nose cut off, both cut off. And then there are a number of other punishments which are just so brutal that they have to be designated by euphemisms. I think someplace I have a note explaining at least some of them. Then they have the criminal splashed with boiling oil, have him devoured by dogs, impaled on a stake, or have the head cut off with a sword. And so when one considers that these are the types of punishments to which I might be subjected if I were to transgress the law and commit a crime, then based on that fear as one's motivation, then one avoids committing crimes. Here the text mentions only that one does not go about plundering the belongings of others. Okay, then comes the fourth kind of danger, the source of fear, and that is the danger of a bad destination. And here somebody reflects, here one is bringing in reflection based on the principle of karma and its fruits. So it's possible, that somebody commits a crime or even commits other types of moral transgression, not so severe as to constitute a crime. But if once one commits moral transgressions, even if one escapes punishment by the authorities, escapes criticism by others, and even if one is able to avoid the pangs of a bad conscience, one is still subject to the ripening of the karma created by those moral transgressions. And though that karma created by moral transgressions, if it gets the opportunity to ripen and to take on the role of generating rebirth, is going to bring about rebirth in the bad destinations or in the course of life, even if one gets a human rebirth, even under good conditions, it will bring about undesirable fruits in the course of life. So in this way, somebody, based on the principle of karma and its fruits, they reflect that bodily misconduct has bad results in future lives. Verbal misconduct has bad results. Even mental misconduct has bad results in future lives. And so one reflects that if I were to engage in misconduct by way of body, speech, and mind, then with the breakup of the body after death, I could be reborn in the plane of misery, in a bad destination, in the lower world, in hell. So what is the plane of misery or the bad destinations? And so we have 3 bad destinations. At least in the early Buddhist texts, we have the hell realms, the animal realm, and the plane of ghosts, or maybe called afflicted spirits. So these 3 make up the bad destinations. Okay, so if unwholesome karma takes on the role of generating rebirth, its inherent tendency is to bring rebirth in one of the bad destinations. And even if unwholesome karma does not take on the rebirth generating role, but suppose some good karma takes on the role of generating rebirth, then it will bring rebirth into the good destinations. So these are the bad destinations. And we have the good destinations. The human realm and the heavenly realms, the various heavenly realms. Okay, so if good karma takes on the role of generating rebirth, it will bring rebirth into one or another of the good destinations. But once you're reborn in the good destinations, it doesn't mean that you escape the ripening of one's bad karma from the past. But if that bad karma gets the opportunity to ripen, then it will bring undesirable results. It brings suffering. It brings maybe debilitating illness. It brings oppressive poverty. It brings failure in one's professional life, one's business undertakings might fail because of the ripening of bad karma. It brings loss of friendships. It could ripen in the form of a bad reputation, criticism and blame by others. And so reflecting on the working of the law of karma and its fruits, the karmic law, the moral law of cause and effect, on that basis, seeing the danger not only of a bad rebirth, but of the ripening of the unwholesome karma, the undesirable fruits of bad karma. One abandons bodily conduct, verbal misconduct, mental misconduct, and develops good bodily, verbal, and mental conduct. So those are the 4 dangers. So all of these, we say these 3, 2, 3, and 4, are the fear of misconduct based on the consequences, the externally ripening consequences, whereas the first one, the danger or peril of self-reproach, is based on maybe fear of the internal consequence of unwholesome conduct, of moral transgression, the nagging voice of a disturbed conscience. Okay, maybe we'll see if there's any questions based on this sutta. Okay, is it pronounced Hui No?
Yeah, correct.
That's correct. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, Bante. Is it okay then to sum the part 2, 3, and 4 under Ottappa, or is Ottappa only connected to the fear of reproach by others, or can we take the other two also?
No. I say Ottappa should extend to all three of them.
Okay.
I don't know how to. Yeah, I could put as a way to draw more parallels. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to clutter the page with arrows, but you could put all three of them under Ottappa.
Thank you.
Okay, we take Jasvinder.
Hello, Bante.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my question. I was wondering if you have some previous vipaka arising, which is not good, is it okay to just use patient endurance and remain silent and just watch it wash away? Is silence an appropriate approach to deal with negative karma from the past?
I don't quite know what you mean by silence, because if if bad karma from the past ripens, what I say is that you have to endure it patiently and try to develop equanimity towards it. It's not a matter of remaining silent, because if bad karma is ripening, I'm not going to talk to it and say, you shouldn't ripen. Is that what you mean? Just enduring it patiently with equanimity?
Sometimes there's people that come from the past and they're creating a conflict, and then it's like you have a decision. You could either engage them or you could show restraint in your speech and just wait for whatever negative outcomes you have to deal with and endure that.
I see. So if other people sort of criticize you and abuse you,
Correct.
it depends on the situation. If you see that there's a chance of, say, correcting the other person, calming the other person down, correcting them, an opportunity to establish a harmonious relationship by speaking and discussing the divisive issue with the other person, then you should use that approach. But when all attempts to establish harmony fail and the person persists in their negative attitude, in their abuse, and their criticism, then often you have no choice but to endure it patiently with equanimity.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay, Dayani?
Yes, Bante, good morning. I have this question about the karma ripening time. Is there different, let's say we conduct karma, and then if there is no right condition for it to ripe, it will stay dormant until the time is there to ripe.
Yeah.
And what is the difference with the defunct karma then? I mean, like,
Okay. Yeah, this is a distinction in types of karma that we find. Maybe it's based on the suttas, but it's made explicit in the commentaries and then absorbed from the commentaries into the Abhidharma. So they distinguish karma into 4 types. There's a karma that its tendency is to ripen in this life itself. So that's the first type. If that karma does not find the opportunity to ripen in this life, then it becomes defunct. It will never ripen, because karma in order to ripen, it has to meet suitable conditions. And sometimes karma just doesn't meet the suitable conditions. So it's like a seed of a crop that is not planted in fertile soil, doesn't get enough water and sunlight and fertilizer and so on. And then that seed dies and it never be able to ripen into the plant. So that is karma that is bound to ripen in this life. And if it doesn't meet the opportunity to ripen, it becomes defunct, will never ripen. Okay, the second type of karma is karma that has the inherent tendency to ripen in the next existence, to ripen upon rebirth in one's next life. If that karma doesn't meet conditions to ripen in the next life, then it becomes defunct, destroyed, will never ripen. The third type of karma is called uparaparya, upara vedaniya karma. That is karma that can ripen any time in the distant future after the next existence, as long as one remains wandering through samsara. So as long as one is bound to the cycle of birth and death, even through aeons in the future, that karma has the potential of ripening. And once it meets with the right conditions, then it will ripen. So that karma only becomes defunct with the attainment of arhatship and liberation, with the ending of the cycle of birth and death. Okay, so next
Hi,
question.
Bounty, good morning. Can I
Who is
ask you
this?
another? This is Julia.
Yeah, I have to take people in the turn.
Oh,
If you want to ask the question, there's a little icon representing the hand, then you have to click.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is Deborah.
Good morning. Thank you, Bhante. I have a question. Is there a karmic difference between avoiding misconduct because of fear of reproach, self-reproach, and avoiding it because of external reproach
Because of fear of being reproached by others.
by others? Right? Is it better to avoid misconduct because of one's conscience or the recognition?
I would say that indicates a more highly developed moral sense than avoiding the misconduct because you want to be afraid, because you're afraid of criticism by others.
Yes. And is there a difference in that, in the effect on karma then?
Yeah, that I don't know. I don't recall seeing any discussion of that point.
Okay, thank you.
But certainly somebody who restrains from wrong. Actually, there is, wait. There comes to mind now actually a passage, and I just read about this in an article that I wanted to share with you. The passage comes in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 147, which draws a distinction between refraining from wrongdoing out of fear and restraining from wrongdoing with not from fear. So we could say that one who refrains from wrongdoing out of fear does so from fear of either criticism from others or fear of the undesirable karmic consequences of transgression or the legal repercussions of transgression. Whereas somebody who refrains not from fear does so just from their inherent commitment to observing a moral course of action, a moral code of conduct.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom Cleary.
Thank you, Venerable. I'd like to ask a question about the way karma was explained to me. The question has to do with the unripened karma. The monk who was explaining it to me said this. He said that unripened karma is not like a book of judgment in the Christian religion. It's not like a satellite, that orbits the earth and records our deeds and misdeeds. He said it's expressed through our own bodily characteristics, our bodily and mental characteristics that we carry forward through our life and through subsequent lifetimes, patterns of mental and physical bodily behaviors that create situations that we engender ourselves because of our behaviors and thoughts. And I just wondered, I don't know if I'm explaining the point of view particularly correctly, but I wondered what if the gist is clear, what you might think of that point of view.
Well, certainly I would say that our karmic activities, our volitional activities, create certain patterns of behavior or dispositions to behave in certain ways. But that doesn't mean that there is not what I would call a retributive dimension to karma. But it's not the case, as that other monk explained to you, it's not the case that there is some divine judge looking over the workings of karma and who metes out punishment and rewards according to the nature of the deeds. It's just that the deeds themselves have the inherent tendency to bring about results or fruits that correspond to the moral character of those deeds, so that unwholesome deeds have the inherent capacity to bring misery and suffering as their fruits. Whereas wholesome conduct, good deeds have the inherent tendency to bring happiness and well-being as their fruits. Yeah, but there's definitely that what I call the retributive aspect or dimension to the working of karma.
May I ask a further question, Venerable?
Okay.
Yeah, it's about the retributive aspects. Is that outside space and time or the usual attributes of dimensions? Is it something that is external to ourselves or what we experience as we go through lifetimes? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't quite get the sense of that. But what I would say is that it's nothing outside space and time. It's just that when deeds are before morally significant deeds, then they create this kind of potential, which inheres within the mind stream, the stream of the mind. And that potential is there. And then when we meet with the suitable conditions, then that potential is activated and the deed ripens in the form of certain consequences or results that correspond to the moral nature of the deed.
Well, that clarifies it. Thank you. Yeah, Mindstream, carrying it forward, certainly clarifies it. Yes, thank you, Venerable.
Okay, I'll have to take just one question and I want to move on to the next sutta. I think this was Samantha.
Yes, thank you, Bhante. I just wanted to just to clarify. I've heard that everything in life is not due to karma. It's something to do with there are other niyamas as well.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, from a practical point of view, how does one live, in the now without being fearful of, thinking about, oh, I've done this in the past karma and that's why I've got it now, and so that one can live, in a peaceful way? Is it just by just doing living a moral life, in sati, with mindfulness? Is that how one should live without having to worry about, without being fearful of?
Yeah, one shouldn't live constantly fearful. Oh, in the past I might have done this, I might have done that. But one should use, let's say, what I call a healthy fear of the consequences if one finds oneself sort of tempted to engage in a moral transgression, then one could use fear of the consequences as a motivation for restraining oneself. But it doesn't mean that you should live in constant, paralyzed by fear, and constantly worried and anxious throughout one's life, but try to live a moral life. In fact, it said that one of the benefits of living the moral life is that one experiences, it's called the anavajja sukha, which means the bliss of blamelessness. So that one feels happy because one knows, one can reflect on one's good conduct and knows that I don't commit transgression by way of body and speech and hopefully even by thought.
Wonderful, thank you. And
Okay.
so are there other, sorry, Bhante, so is everything not due to karma then? Are there other factors as well? Take into
Yeah, there are
consideration.
different domains of causality.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, let's see if Julia's question, and we'll end with that.
Thank you, Bhante. Actually, one of the questions has already been answered. Suicide, maybe I missed the previous presentation or the pages, is considered self-reproach? Reproach?
No, suicide isn't self-reproach. Self-reproach means you blame yourself for moral transgression.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's suicide can lead to bad karma.
Presumably, but I would say presumably it does, but it's not so much directly related to the sutta that we're discussing.
Okay,
Okay, so we're going to move on now to the next sutta.
all right, thank you.
Okay, so now we have the fourth in this group of suttas concerned with the same key word, the same theme, which again, it's perils, the baya.
Bye.
Yeah, that's the Pali word, is baya. So these are said to be 4 perils to be faced by one who goes down to the water. I guess this would be a common experience in northern India, maybe going down to major rivers. The peril of waves, the peril of crocodiles, the peril of whirlpools, and the peril of fierce fish. And so if you have to go to the water to bathe, because in ancient India, they would often go into the rivers to bathe or to wash clothing. And so one has to be careful to avoid being swept away by strong waves, getting sucked down into a whirlpool, or encountering crocodiles or fierce biting fish. And so similarly, there are 4 perils to be expected and to be avoided by a clansman who has gone forth out of faith from the household life into homelessness in this Dhamma and discipline in the Buddha's teaching. So what are the 4? The same, the peril of waves, now the Buddha is speaking metaphorically, the peril of crocodiles, the peril of whirlpools, and the peril of fierce fish. Okay, so what is the peril of waves? So here we have a clansman, that's a young man who has gone forth from the household life into homelessness, thinking, here I am, I'm stuck in birth, old age, and death, and sorrow, lamentation, pain, and anguish, and so forth. I'm immersed in suffering, afflicted by suffering, and maybe an ending of this whole mass of suffering can be attained. And so he goes forth into the homeless life, becomes a monk, and then the other monks start giving him instructions. They say you should go out in such and such a way. You should return in such and such a way. You should look ahead in such and such a way, look aside in such a way. You should move your limbs in such and such a way. You should wear your robes and carry your roll, your extra robe and your bowl in such and such a way. So these are just examples, but we have this person goes forth, and then the other monks start giving him instructions. And maybe this person who's gone forth has been like a business executive, or he's been a farmer with a huge estate with many people working under him, and he gives the instructions to the farmhands, or a merchant conducting business with a team of employees, and he gives the instructions. And now, or maybe coming to contemporary times, maybe he's been a medical doctor, prestigious position, or a psychologist giving advice to others, a social worker, a lawyer, a computer programmer, again, maybe with a staff under him or under her. But here it's using the example of a clansman, a male. And then he goes forth, and here I went in Sri Lanka. I went to Sri Lanka with a PhD in philosophy, and then these young monks start telling me how I should conduct myself, how you should move, how to wear the robe, how to take the meals. Even I remember when I started to take the meals in Sri Lanka, I would peel the banana the way we do in America and eat the whole banana, just munching on it from the top down. And the younger monk told me, that's not the correct way to eat the banana, according to the monastic etiquette. They say that if the lay people see you eating a banana in that way, they'll say, look at that foreign monk. He's just like a monkey, not like a monk. So the correct way in the monastic training, at least in Sri Lanka, to eat the banana, you peel it, of course, and then you have to break it off piece by piece. Each mouthpiece you break off and then put it in the mouth. Or you could use the spoon or a knife to cut it into mouth-size slices and then eat it. But you just don't take the whole banana. I don't have a banana with me, but letting this belt, and then start munching on it from the top down. And then you might think that you could wear the robe casually, sort of the way we wear it indoors. We just fling it over the right shoulder. But when you go out, the correct way is to roll when you're going out into the town or the city or the village, the correct way is to roll the robe up in such a way that you get something like I've heard it called the elephant's trunk. It's like a roll that you then fling over the shoulder so that you're covering both shoulders with the robe. And then when you move about in public, you're supposed to move mindfully. You just can't walk in a casual way quickly and looking to the left, looking to the right, seeing what's interesting, anything nice to see in the shops. Oh, I'm looking in this shop and that shop, and just moving in a very casual way. But one is supposed to move in such a way that you are self-restrained, the eyes generally cast down. But of course, when moving in traffic, you have to look around and look ahead. But you have to give the impression of being mindful and self-composed, self-possessed. And now you're getting these instructions from the younger monks, also including that you should eat in such and such a way as well. And so then this person who's gone forth thinks, formerly when I was a layman, then I was the one giving instructions and directions to others. But now these youngsters, they're young enough to be my sons or even grandsons. Now they are giving instructions to me, telling me, do this, do that. And then you get angry and upset and displeased and think, I'm not going to stand for this, to be bossed around by these young monks. And then one gives up the training and returns to the lower life, that's to the household life. So the Buddha says, this is called a monk who has given up the training and reverted to the lower life because of the peril of waves. And so waves is a symbol or a metaphor for anger and irritation, anger and annoyance. So that's the peril of waves. Okay, now we come to the peril of crocodiles. So what are crocodiles? So again, we have the clansman who has gone forth seeking an end of suffering. And then after he's gone forth, his fellow monks exhort and instruct him. You can eat this, but not that. These are just two different words for eating. You may taste this, but not that. You may drink this, but not that. Certain things are allowable, certain things are unallowable. You can consume, eat, taste, and drink within the proper time, but you can't eat outside the proper time. Yeah, actually within the monastic life, especially in the Theravada tradition, there's pretty much the things that we normally would eat. There's no prohibition against eating those things. The things that are prohibited, even in the Theravada countries, even vegetarianism is not mandatory. It's just certain types of meats are prohibited, but those are types of meats that we wouldn't normally eat, like dog's meat, lion's meat, tiger meat. In the Far Eastern or East Asian Buddhist traditions of China, Vietnam, Korea, the monasteries are necessarily vegetarian. But anyway, the main problem for some, at least within the Theravada tradition, is the time of eating, that the correct time for taking substantial food is between daybreak and midday, noontime. And then after that, liquids are permissible, though milk is said to be not permissible because it's considered a food. But any kind of beverage, other kinds of beverages, soft drinks, teas, fruit drinks. Nowadays, things like soy milk and almond milk are considered allowable after 12 noon. But for some, this becomes a problem, though I've never really found many monastics who have a problem with this, but some find it difficult, and maybe they're tempted to cheat, and then nobody is looking to eat after midday. But if one is constantly being reproached and told you can eat within the proper time, not outside the proper time, then you start to think, formerly in the lay life, I was able to eat whatever I wanted and to eat any time that I wanted. But now when devout householders give us delicious things to eat during the day outside the proper time, it seems that these younger monks are putting a gag over our mouths. So then he becomes angry and displeased and gives up the training and goes back to the household life. And so the Buddha says this is called the monk who has given up the training and returned to the household life because of the peril of crocodiles. And so what is meant by crocodiles? The crocodile is a designation for gluttony. What is the Pali word that's used here? Yeah, the Pali word is odarika. Udarikata, which is based on the word udara. Udara means the belly. And so udarikata, literally it would be something like belliness. But rendered freely, the intent seems to be gluttony. Okay, now we come to the third peril. So this is the third danger. This is the danger of whirlpools. So the opening is the same. So that we have the person, the man who has gone forth into the homeless life, seeking to an end to this entire mass of suffering. And then when he's gone forth in the morning, he dresses, he takes his bowl, an extra robe, and enters the village or town for alms. And with body, speech, and mind unguarded, without having established mindfulness and the senses unrestrained. So this is why it's important to guard. When you speak about guarding body, speech, and mind, what really has to be guarded is the mind. But when the mind is guarded, then the body is composed and sort of drawn in, and the speech is curtailed. So one is not talk, especially when one is going on alms round, that is not supposed to be conversing with others. And if one has to converse with, say, the people offering the alms, one will just speak politely about simple matters, but not let oneself engage in an extended conversation with them where you start to develop feelings of intimacy towards them. So you have to be mindful in speaking. So you have established mindfulness, and one restrains the senses. So one is not looking about to see this, to see that, to listen to this, listen to that. So we have this monk on alms round who has not established mindfulness, not guarding the mind, not restraining the senses. And then he sees a householder or a young householder enjoying himself, indulging in the 5 objects of sensual pleasures, in beautiful forms, sounds, odors, tastes, and tactile sensations. And I think at this point, it doesn't yet include, well, the objects of sexual enjoyment, because that will come as the 4th danger. So here one might see, in today's world, one sees the young man enjoying a nice house, whereas you are living just in a little hut. And he gets out from his house and gets into his car, his Jaguar or his Honda or Toyota, and can drive around. And maybe he has friends over and they're listening to music. And maybe you get the smell of delicious food coming out from the house. Or maybe they're out in the garden or the patio, drinking and listening to music and chatting. And here you are, you've adopted this life of hardship, of renunciation, dedicated self-restraint and striving for liberation. And then as you see these sights of the lay people enjoying themselves, and nowadays you don't even have to go to the town, village, or to the village or town, but you go you're watching the internet and maybe or television, and there'll be advertisements where you see the group of friends getting together for a outdoor barbecue during the summer, and they're sitting around on the patio pouring maybe a bottle of wine, drinking the wine and chatting, the men and the women laughing together. And then you think, well, when I was a lay person, I was able to enjoy myself in that way. And here I am living under such difficult conditions, eating just during one period of the day, only in the morning, can't eat at night, can't associate freely with the women, can't drink the wine, don't get to sit around with my friends chatting and listening to music. And so why am I subjecting myself to such hardship? My family has wealth, I can enjoy that wealth, and I could, I don't have to engage in bad deeds. I could do deeds of merit. I can make offerings to the monks and nuns. I can engage in pujas and offer dana and engage in join the ceremonies at the monastery. And so let me now give up the training and return to the lay life. And then I can enjoy my wealth, enjoy the pleasures of the senses, and do meritorious deeds to ensure myself a fortunate rebirth. And so he gives up the training and returns to the lower life. And so that's said to be the one who's returned to the lower life because of the peril or danger of whirlpools. And so what's meant by whirlpools? The 5 objects of sensual pleasure: enjoyable forms, sounds, odors, tastes, and tactile sensations. Okay, now we come to the 4th peril. And I have to speak a little apologetically about this. And we have to remember that before I describe this, that the Buddhist texts were formulated in a predominantly patriarchal culture in which emphasis was given to the males. And the Buddha's, at least the largest community of his renunciant followers, were men who had left the household life to become monks. The Buddha also had bhikkhuni or nun disciples, and I think that they have their corresponding danger, which I will add as a kind of addition to the sutta. But first, let's take the danger in the case of the male disciples. So here we have the peril of fierce fish. So again, we have the clansman who has gone forth into the homeless life, seeking an end to the entire mass of suffering. Again, he goes forth into after he's gone forth, he goes into the village or town on alms round, again with the body, speech, and mind unguarded, without mindfulness, with the senses unrestrained. And then he sees women with their dress in disarray and loosely attired. And I have to say that this does happen. I mean, this is my experience in Southeast, in Sri Lanka, some going on alms round in the morning. It's not that the women come out with their breasts showing, with their nightgowns open, but sometimes you come out in the morning and they're maybe still wearing the nightgown, or, because they're just dressed casually to carry on their day-to-day affairs within their home. So they're not especially well covered. And so one sees at least the upper part of the body, and they're rather casual in their movements. And so when one sees the women in that way, then if one is not mindful and restrained in the senses, then sensual lust seeps into the mind. And then as the mind gets invaded by lust, it doesn't mean that right on the spot one gives up the training and returns to the household life. But maybe the impressions, the sense impressions of the women coming out lightly dressed. Maybe if they're wearing some perfume, one will pick up the fragrance of the perfume. Or sometimes they're actually very demure in their manner, very respectful. And that also makes a strong impression on the mind, which builds up a kind of feeling of affection. And so that gains momentum in the mind over time. So as one sits to start the meditation, then those images and thoughts start to pop up in the mind and gain momentum. Particularly a young monk who might be seeing young girls, say you have a young monk in his early 20s, and the young girls, maybe 16, 17, are sent out by their mother thinking, say, who instruct the girls, you should go and offer the alms to our venerable one when he comes on alms round. And so our young monk starts the images of the young girls, 16, 17-year-old girls, start seeping into the mind, or even the older monk in his 30s and 40s, if the images of the young women in their 20s start seeping into the mind, then gradually it starts taking control of the mind. And so one decides, let me give up the training and return to the household life. So the Buddha says that is called the monk who has given up the training and returned to the lower life because of the peril of fierce fish. And so what is the peril of fierce fish? So this is a designation for women. Okay, I'm a little bit sorry if somebody feels offended by this, but in the case of the women disciples, we also have the counterpart. And the counterpart to this, I would call, it's not so much the sight. I don't think it's just the sight of handsome men or strong and handsome men that forms the temptation. But what I say is this, the fierce fish for the female, for the woman monastic, is the smooth talking man, the sweet mannered, maybe handsome, and sweet talking, smooth talking male. And we find some examples of this in the Anguttara Nikaya, in a section or chapter called the Bhikkhuni Sangyutta, where that soft talking, sweet talking male is represented by Mara, the evil one. So in this sutta, but I still have the old formatting characters that I use. We have Upalavana, who is a bhikkhuni who was reputed to be very beautiful. And then we have Mara, the evil one, wishes to make her fall away from concentration, from samadhi. And Upalavana at this time is an arahant. So she is really she cannot be seduced. But we have Mara comes up to her and says, here you are, you've gone to a sal tree with flowering top, and you're sitting here or standing here all alone. Then he flatters her and says, there is no one whose beauty rivals yours. Foolish girl, aren't you afraid of rogues? Though this isn't the one that I was seeking. I was looking for the one where, this is the one, it's Vijaya. So here Mara comes to her and says, you are so young and beautiful, and I too am a youth in the prime of life. Come, noble lady, let us rejoice. Why are you wasting your beauty on living this renunciant life? Come, let us rejoice with the music of a fivefold ensemble. And then Vijaya responds to him and tells him that the pleasures of the senses don't have any more attraction for me. I offer them right back to you. I'm not attracted, I'm not attached to this foul body anymore, subject to break up and fragile. I've uprooted sensual craving. And then she rejects Mara. So that would be the counterpart of the fierce fish for in the case of the female disciples. Smooth talking, seductive, smooth talking, potential seducers who try to lead the renunciant women astray. Okay, so those are the 4 perils to be expected for one who has gone forth into the household life. Okay, let's see if we can take a few questions. So please, if you want to ask any questions, please use the hand device, the hand symbol. Okay, we can take Vinyu. Yeah, please go ahead. Okay, I'm not getting any sound. Perhaps you didn't unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I hear you. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Bhante, I have this question in regards to the Tantric Buddhism, as well as some of the monk, the association with, say, in Japan, that they seems to be able to marry and have kids. So in Buddhism, we suppose that the monk are not has to observe the celibacy and not supposed to marry. So what is the explanation for that?
Yeah, you see what happened in Japanese Buddhism, the full monastic system of monastic discipline had not been transmitted to Japan. But up until, I think, the 19th century, the monks used to observe celibacy. But then, if I remember correctly, but this is a historical matter that I'm not fully informed about. It was through one of the dynasties. Is it called the Meiju dynasty? I could be corrected on this. They were favoring the Shinto religion over against Buddhism. And so they wanted to harm the reputation of Buddhism. And so they issued a decree, the emperor issued a decree that the monks were no longer bound to observe celibacy. They could marry and bring up families if they wanted. And so as a result of that decree, the great majority, the overwhelming of the majority of the monks gave up the observance of celibacy and married to have families. But now strictly then, we can't call them monks because they're not ordained according to the Vinaya monastic system, but we say that they're Buddhist priests and their primary function is to perform priestly functions rather than to live in monasteries and observe the monastic discipline.
So what about the Tibetan monk? Because some of them that practice the Tantric Buddhism that can have the sexual intercourse with the disciple.
Yes, strictly in the Tibetan system, those who are ordained as monks, as bhikshus, cannot have sexual relations with a female with females. But it's a bit confusing in Tibetan Buddhism. There are lamas who are regarded as properly trained Buddhist teachers who do not receive monastic ordination. It gets confusing because they wear robes that seem similar to the monks' robes. The robes are a maroon color, but they don't shave the head. And so strictly, they are not monks. And so they marry and have families. And perhaps they can have sexual relations within the tantric rituals. But those who are ordained as monks, like the Dalai Lama and his disciples, cannot have actual sexual intercourse with actual sexual intercourse.
Okay, I'm clear now. Okay, thank you, Bante. Right, thanks.
And if they
Bante.
do, if some, I mean, this has been an abuse that has happened within the Tibetan system, that Tibetan monks have told females that we're going to practice the secret tantric ritual, that you shouldn't tell anybody that we're doing this, but after 11 o'clock at night, you come to my room and knock 3 times, and I'll let you in. And then I'm going to give you this special tantric initiation, special for you, but don't tell anybody about this. It's just between us. So if they do that, if they're a properly ordained monk and they do that, then they're transgressing the rule of discipline. And then
Okay.
when the authorities find out about that, then they have to be forced to leave the order.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Bante. Yep.
Wait, I just want to give some instructions to Venerable Mangala. Are you there? I want to ask him.
I'm here, Bante.
Yeah, can you have them send my lunch down so I can take some more questions?
You got it, Bante.
Okay. Tsuku could bring it down by car. Okay. Lim Kim?
Evening, morning, Bante.
Yeah.
Regarding the 4 perils that you mentioned on the sutta, where at the end the monk disrobe and become a layman.
Yeah.
Just curious, in the monastic rules, do those senior monks will advise all these monks before they give up their monkhood, or is it we just let them give up easily?
No, generally, if the younger monk or even a monk of one's the same age wants to give up the monastic life and return to household life, once you tell the senior monk or your monk friend your intention to disrobe, they'll try to dissuade you and encourage you to continue on and use various methods to give encouragement to continue in the monastic life.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ravisara?
Thank you, Bante. I'm asking this out of curiosity, Bante, because you talked about karma earlier, karma vipaka. I've heard stories of people going to the hell realm and then the King Yama sort of assessing what they've done and all before sort of deciding on a punishment. So I think, is there any basis for this in the suttas, Bante?
Well, there are suttas which illustrate this with the example of King Yama questioning the person before consigning him to hell. But I think we have to see this as just a metaphorical or pictorial representation of a process that takes place, an impersonal process that takes place. It's not that one actually comes before a judge who asks you about your deeds and then assigns you according to your deeds. But this is in order to make it, to represent it pictorially for the audience, that kind of description is given. Okay, and Fong?
Thank you, Bante. My question is, we as a lay follower, should we study and practice the Vinaya and develop our moral sense based on the Vinaya as lay person?
No, the Vinaya is the code of monastic rules. So it might be good to get familiar with the monastic rules, but a lay person shouldn't try to follow in their complete detail the monastic rules, the rules that are laid down for monks and nuns. Because that would make it rather difficult to live in the household life. Like if you observe that rule, the Vinaya, then you can't eat after midday. Yeah, it's just not suitable. For the layperson, the ideal is to live in accordance with the 5 regular precepts. And then on special occasions, particularly on the full moon and new moon days, the ideal is to observe the 8 precepts, which you find described in the Anguttara Nikaya in the Book of Eights, around sutta number 41 in the Book of Eights and elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom Cleary.
Thank you, Venerable. My question follows on Anne Fong's, actually. I was wondering about seeking a deeper level of commitment and training. And I just wondered, maybe this is outside the context of your teaching about the suttas, but I wondered what you thought of international monasteries, such as those in Thailand, for example, for training for Westerners who may not have access in the United States to monk training.
Yeah, I don't really know about them, so I can't, comment on them.
Thank you, Venerable.
Okay, I think we're going to have to end now for the day. So this will be the last in this particular season of sutta teaching, because I'm going to be starting on January 21st, I will go on my winter retreat. But what I'm going to do during the winter retreat, on Wednesday evenings, I'll continue to have the guided meditation from 7 to 8 p.m. And then on Saturday morning, what I'm going to do is have a extended meditation session, so that we'll have the first sitting meditation from 9:30 to 10:10, and that will be a session of guided loving kindness meditation. Then from 10:10 to 10:30, we do a period of the walking meditation. Then from 10:30 to 11:10, 11:15, then we'll have another session of sitting meditation, doing the mindfulness of breathing meditation. So please do come online on Saturdays and join us for the extended, almost an hour and 45 minutes of meditation. And then on Sundays, Venerable Mangala will continue to give the Sunday evening meditation 7 to 8 p.m. with a question and answer session 8 to 8:30 p.m. And beginning this Monday, Venerable Mangala will be creating these podcasts, 5 to 7 minute podcasts of a thought for the week. These will be reflections based on extended verses from the Dhammapada. And the links to those will be sent out probably on Monday mornings. Okay, so let me just end quickly with the sharing of the merits. So we join the palms and share the merits. Akasata Tribhumaka Deva Naga Mahedika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Sasanam. Akasata Tribhumata Deva Naga Mahedika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desanam. Akasata Tribhumata Deva Naga Mahedika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mang Parang. Okay, we end with 3 bows to the Buddha. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you, Sabante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Please take care. We love you, Bante.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
We love you.
Love you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante. Take care, Bante.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you,
retreat.
Bante.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bante. We love
And
you.
have a nice weekend.